All right. Welcome, everybody. We were just talking about this is week 6 of the semester already. This is amazing. We've had a great professional development series so far, and today is no different. I am very excited that we have Colby Moorberg, Brian Lindshield, and Scott Finkeldei here to talk to us about alternative textbook stuff we can do in Canvas, and all kinds of ways that we can make our teaching more innovative no matter what the circumstance. So I am very excited, and I'm glad to see all of you here. So I'm going to turn this over to Colby.
All right. Thanks, everyone, for joining. So I was initially asked by Tucker and Don to present on some different unique cases of what I use in Canvas. And I think for the most part, what I do isn't really that unique from anyone else. But I think there was one kind of aspect that I've used that I think would be useful for some of you that are considering ways to get away from a commercial or traditional textbook. And so I've had 2 classes where I've eliminated the use of a commercial textbook altogether. And to do that, it's sort of taken some unique aspects of how I actually use Canvas to do that. So I'll talk about that for the first 15 minutes. And then, Brian, do you want to introduce your section for the next 15 minutes after that?
Sure, I'm going to talk about some ways that I utilize Canvas that might help with student engagement and success. So everything from how to add Gifs to announcements very easily, fast. So I'll show how I do that, to how I communicate to students on whether they've not submitted something, whether they got a low score, tried to utilize things in that way. And so I'll talk about those things. I don't know if it'll take me 15 minutes, but I'll try to show some of the things I do there.
All right. And then after that, we have Scott Finkeldei here as well. And our intention is to leave about the second half of the of this session open to have sort of a town hall discussion. So if you guys have any questions about certain aspects of Canvas, then Scott would be probably the best contact for a lot of those questions. But Brian and I and anyone else from the audience can kind of help chime in as well. So
yeah, exactly. That'll be a great time to share your ideas that either fit in with the OER or engagement suggestions that Colby and Brian have had, or to suggest other ideas that you think are valuable to the audience. Obviously, people are here because they're looking for ways to use Canvas better, and these are some really helpful specific ways. So we'll hopefully have a nice chat afterwards. Thank you.
All right, so I'm going to go ahead and share my screen, and I'm going to actually show you the Canvas pages for 2 of these courses. So the first one is a Ground 305, which is the introductory soil science class, and I have the page loads directly into the modules section of the Canvas course. And what I've done is I've set it up where each lecture topic has its own module. And then what I've done is, in order to eliminate having a specific reading assignment from a textbook, what I've done is I've went out and found what I call alternative reading assignments, which are basically resources that are online from credible sources that are free and available to the students. So generally these are, there's a lot of extension bulletins that are used. There's also YouTube videos or publications from federal agencies. For the soil science class, we use a lot of resources for the Natural Resources Conservation Service, which is an agency within the USDA. So we have a range of different activities or different reading assignments. And my mouse is frozen on me. That's bad timing. Hold on one second. Canvas that lists all the having a little bit of technical issues here. All right. So it lists all of the learning objectives and also provides the assigned readings for the students. So if I open up one of these pages, what I've done is I always start the pages with a list of the objectives that I want them to have achieved by the end of that unit, either through reading these reading assignments or through going through the lecture content that we have for the course. And so I use the same organization for every single assigned reading document or page. And so I list all the student learning outcomes here. And then I go into the assigned readings and I give some direction on what to actually read, and I provide a link to it. So in this case, I just wanted them to read the introduction from what is actually a relatively long document. And then here I have a whole nother PDF that they can read. So, and then I also specify what learning objectives are associated with each reading. And so hopefully that gives some more more specifics of what I want them to accomplish with each of these different readings. And so in one way, I'm eliminating the need for a commercial textbook, but also sort of a side goal from this is I want the students to become familiar with credible sources of information that they can use once they're actually out working their careers. So they're not always going to have a brand new textbook to refer to, but they can often find credible resources that are available to them for free. So I set all these up in pages, and then one thing that I do to encourage them to actually complete their the reading assignments is I created a reading quiz that they're supposed to complete after they do these readings, and they're expected to do that before they come to class. And so for each of these reading quizzes, it's set up where there are 3 questions that are randomly selected from a question bank of up to around 12 questions, or 10 or 12 questions usually. And so here's the background for, or the instructor view for one reading quiz. And so it selects 3 questions from a question bank, and then they get up to 5 attempts. And so the goal from this is not necessarily to see how much they learned, but to really just kind of make sure that they're actually engaging with the material. And if they end up getting a perfect score in a couple of attempts, then that's fine in my opinion. The main thing is I want them to actually read the material. And then how I have it set up is this one was due initially on August 21st. And so it's due at the start of lecture. And so that's the official due date. But what I do is I set it up so that they have until the end of that unit. So in this case, our first exam was September 4th. And I set it up where at midnight, the night before that exam, is the final deadline where they can submit these quizzes. And that gives some flexibility that's kind of built into the system where if they're sick or has some excused absence, then I don't have to keep track of who needs to have who needs an alternative due date for each assignment. They get some flexibility that's built into it. So that kind of reduces the workload on my end, but it also gives them some flexibility if they need it. So that's my approach with these reading quizzes. And then beyond that, each module is set up where it also includes a recorded lecture as well as other materials for it too. I see I have a couple of questions coming in. What is the criteria to give the students for credible sources? So in this class, the credible sources are things that I provide to the students. So I'm evaluating what I think is credible. Now in a different class, which was I was going to talk about in the second part of this, and that's a Grand 635, which is called Soil and Water Conservation. And for that, I actually work with the students to identify these credible resources. And so for that format, I've actually worked with these students to eventually produce this open textbook, Soil and Water Conservation and Annotated Bibliography. So with 2 separate classes that have taken a Grand 635, I've had 20 students total that are now co-authors on individual chapters. And so in that class, those students actually were participating in developing this open textbook. And I worked with them and to help show them what's a credible resource and how to summarize those in annotations. All right, looks like there's some people answering questions for me in the question bank. So yeah, you can do short answer instead of multiple choice. But just for simplicity for these quizzes, I just do multiple choice or true false for the most part. All right, so for soil and water conservation, my approach to that is this is an upper level class that has enrollments of 10 to 18 is what I've seen in the course after teaching it for 6 semesters or 6 different times. And in that class, It's usually, the students are higher level undergrad and lower level graduate students for the most part, because as being a 600 level course. And the class, I've slowly turned it in, or converted it from a lecture-based course to one that's more of a flipped classroom that's more discussion-based. And so what I do for the reading assignments in this is I have a running list that you see here. And I'll open up our active running list for this semester. And in this running list, I basically say a date. So each of these it's a Monday, Wednesday lecture with a Thursday lab. And so you can see what things I want them to read prior to that particular class. And so for today's class this morning, we had 3 one-page PDFs that I wanted them to review prior to coming to class. And what I do is as we go throughout the semester, I add new reading assignments to this page. And all these reading assignments are coming from the textbook that we've developed as part of this course. And so how this textbook is set up, this is the web book version of it. And so we can go in to an individual topic, and there's multiple sources that are included for each kind of main topic. And so let's look at one example of a practice. For this practice, I have a picture, and then we have some extension bulletins and some other resources and some documents from the NRCS. And so all these are credible sources that the students helped identify, and they helped actually write the annotations for them. And so this format doesn't rely as heavily on Canvas as I used for my introductory soil science class. But I think just the use of the running list of reading assignments is kind of helpful. And if you want to read more about that, I will publish a link to this case study, or I'll put that in the chat. But we did a case study on developing this open textbook, or this annotated bibliography with the students. And so you can go check that out if you have any questions about using that sort of format for an open textbook.
Colby, do you have any comments to say about when you make a link off to an external site, say some of these public research sites, any trouble that your students run into or opening in new windows or anything like that in your experience?
I guess I haven't really had too much of an issue in Canvas. I guess what I should do, now you mentioned that, so if a student is using a screen reader, then having this long URL isn't an ideal scenario. And so there's workarounds for that. And so when I put this textbook together in Pressbooks, I actually have some code built into the URL or built into the HTML, where if a student is using a code reader or a screen reader, it will say link to the NRCS website or something like that. And so it doesn't actually read off every single character in this long URL. And so that does take some extra effort to make that kind of optimized for students that are using screen readers. So far, I have not had a student that has used a screen reader in either one of my soils classes, but this textbook is set up for that. And if I needed to, I could probably do the same thing in these pages. So if you go in to edit a page, you can go into the HTML and add some codes to that.
Yeah, and we can talk about how Canvas can maybe help make that a little bit easier, and agreed that that's the best practice and helpful practice would be to ensure you have alternate text or link text for those. Yeah.
So yeah, the best practice, I guess, is so right here I have the actual URL. What I could do is just cut that and highlight available for download, add in a link, and I'll fix it live right here so you guys can see how to do it. So now that's hyperlinked, and a screen reader would just read which is available for download. And so now there's no problems with screen readers. So that's the best approach. The reason I use the code that's in the background for the book is that this is an annotated bibliography where I actually needed the format of a bibliography. So I needed those URLs to show up. And so the workaround was to put the code to work with the screen readers.
And you can place both side by side. So you could place a shortened link like you did by linking it to text, which I appreciate you showing how to do that. and then also list the full URL. Most people that use screen readers are practiced to when they hear that first bit that says the text that directs them to the link and then the URL, they know to skip that second URL, and they're pretty quick to bypass that once they realize that format. So doing them both can be a nice way to handle it. And if I may add one other detail real quick without getting too deep, the text that you choose to make a link, make sure it's descriptive of where they're going or what it is about. Don't just say click here. That is not helpful. Instead, available for download, which is sort of the point of providing the link in this case, is the right kind of text to choose. Or you might say article on topic X and make that the link, so it's clear by when it's read back to them what the purpose of it is. And I'll thank you, Colby.
Thanks. And then one kind of general comment I have, particularly about the intro soils class, where I'm using the modules to provide all these reading assignments. Just looking at the comments that I've had in TVALs, a common trend that I've seen when I've asked students like what they enjoyed about the course is they really like how well it's organized. And I think just having a consistent order for how all these things are presented and having a consistent format for the learning objectives and assigned reading page, I think that's kind of a critical aspect. So I put some effort into that, and the students seem to appreciate it. All right, so let me, yes, Tucker, have you been keeping an eye on the questions? Is there anything I need to address from the Zoom chat so far?
I think you're good, Colby, myself. Okay. I've been monitoring it. There's good discussion going on, but I don't know if there's anything you have to answer specifically. Yeah, it's kind of around, I guess I describe it as around the things that you've been describing, not necessarily that you have to.
Okay, sounds good. All right, so that's kind of the main points I wanted to cover. I think from here, I'll hand it over to Brian, and then I'll be available for questions after this.
Great, thank you, Colby. If you stop sharing your screen, I'll probably jump and share once you do that. Okay, so I have a few examples of things that I wanted to show. So the first was media comments, which is something that I used for the first time this semester in Canvas. I don't know, I guess I can see any of you out there use these before. If you want to use your little Zoom hand or whatever, you know what I mean, the respond here if you utilize this feature before, or you can use the chat, that's fine too. So I see some people are using that. But this is the first time I've used it. The reason why I used it is I use it for in-person class in this case. Everybody has masks on and it's hard to see what everybody looks like. Suzanne says it's a little clunky. I would agree. You know what I mean, that it's a little clunky, but it's easy. You know what I mean, versus having to teach them how to upload video and things in my experience. And so that's part of the reason that I liked it. And so here's how I used it was an about me discussion. This is a graded discussion, which I hadn't done a lot of these before either, but it's worked really well, you know, as far as a option. And so you come down, and so it gives the instruction on how this exactly works, and it'll create a video that looks something like, you know, what's shown here. And so this is what my example video looks like that you can create using this that I'll show quickly. All right, here's my practice video. Start to see if this will work for students to be able to record themselves so they can see one another. So obviously, hugely informative video that I made, but it displayed what the functionality did. Scott, can you talk about, it uses Flash is the other thing that I need to caution people about. And so Scott, can you talk about, are they working to upgrade this functionality? Because I think it's nice to have it formatted in this way, but if it's going to be Flash based, that's obviously kind of a dying technology.
So for yes, the short answer, yes, Canvas is looking to engineering to replace that with something other than Flash with HTML5, and we've seen that in a version of Canvas, but they have not replaced Flash yet. Some browsers will block Flash by default now, and you'll have to excuse me, you'll have to say yes to some security options to get that to work, and the help desk help you work through that. But the short answer is yes, it requires Flash still. Canvas is supposed to be working on that. I have seen that they've made progress, but I haven't seen when they're supposed to release that.
Okay, thank you, Scott. And yes, I will. I'm happy to put these instructions in a Word document and share them like Don's asking for. I know Flipgrid and some things like that might work better, but I try to limit the number of things that I'm asking my students to utilize, and that's part of the reason why I did this. And so I'm happy to make those instructions available. I did want to show it as an example, but then the other thing that I thought was very useful for the media comments, and so I don't know how many of you have used them for actually responding to students. So this is what I asked my students to do. They made their video here, and then I chose instead of make a video back to them, because I was just at a state where it's like I didn't want to roll off lots and lots of video. I recorded a audio message back to them. And so it's an option that you can choose from the drop down within there to be able to just choose audio and not video. And so this is kind of what that looks like. Hi, Catherine. Thanks for your video. As to your questions, whether the class stays in person is going to depend on what happens at the broader university. So part of the reason I gave my presentation on the first day, the more you can do yourself, you get the idea. You don't need to listen to the whole 40-second video, but you can see that it's a quick way to be able to respond back. As part of their videos, they had to ask 2 questions for me to answer. And I said, oh, I'll start typing. And I started typing. I was like, this is going to take me forever. And so then I decided to use the media comments, and I found like it was a much faster way for me to be able to respond back to them. Plus, they only hear me mostly with a mask on. And so at least they got to hear me, you know, without that in this case, and recording these media comments back. And so I felt like I was happy with how it worked outside of the flashiness, you know what I mean, of the apparatus, I guess, and things. I'm hoping that maybe if they do get HTML5 updated, that this will work a little bit better, you know what I mean, than what it does currently. But I think there's a lot of potential, you know what I mean, for this being built into Canvas to be able to utilize to engage with students. So unless there's questions at this point, I'm going to change over to my next topic, which is talking about communicating through the gradebook. Okay, so I'm not seeing anything. I can always come back later. So next thing I was going to talk about is communicating to students using gradebook communication options. And so I'm guessing most people know how to do this, but I was like, well, maybe people don't, you know, and so I thought I should at least say, you know, this is how I utilize this. And so if you've not used this feature right here, you right click to the side and you click the message students who. And so this option is great to be able to say, I often use this the day after something's due. I will go in here and say who hasn't submitted, and I will send a message to them about that, hey, you've not submitted this assignment. Can you please get it submitted to help remind them? The other thing that I do is I have quizzes and things that I'm looking at closely to get a sense on how they're performing in my class and whether they're understanding the information. And so this scores less than option, which I didn't want to show any students grades. And so you see I'm out here where there's no grades. But you can do a scores less than, oh, you know, this assignment's worth 7.5 points. Let's say I'm worried about anybody that scored less than 5. You know what I mean? And so you can go in and say, okay, this student scored less than 5 in this case. And so no one's been graded here yet. And so the fact that this student scored, you know, 0 just means that she submitted it and no one else has. But you can go and say, hey, I want to reach out to everybody who scored less than 5 out of 7.5 points and write a message to them to maybe see if they could reach out to me, or if I can find some way to engage with them on how maybe they can be more successful in the course. And so I found these options to be very useful, you know what I mean, to be able to communicate quickly with students. And in my experience, I feel like they respond better to the Canvas communication oftentimes than email. And so being able to use the ingrained Canvas communication has been very valuable to me to be able to communicate with students. Okay, any questions on that before I shift to my last thing, which would be the inserting the Gifs, you know, part of what I proposed I was going to talk about today. So good discussions about captioning and things within Canvas. I see in the chat. Okay, so not seeing any. So the inserting the GIFs. And so here is a I did get a question about how you access the message feature. So you come over here to the gradebook and you just click message students who right here. And then that's where you get into the message options. So it can be has not submitted, scored less than, all these sorts of things you can look at. It's a really, and part of the reason I was like, I don't know if I should show people this is I use it so much that I feel like I guess I feel like everybody's using it, but maybe they aren't. I guess some things, because it's one of my main ways that I'm trying to communicate to certain students.
I sing the praises of that message students who not that many people do use it or are even aware of it. And I think you're right to highlight the value of that. And Canvas is working to expand the items that go in there along with their new analytics. They're going to start giving you other options of ways or reasons to contact people.
Okay, that's good to know. I personally have not found the Canvas analytics to be all that great. I know that they're working to improve them, so that would be helpful if that's the case. But this feature here for me is, so someone's asked about assignment statistics. It used to be in here. You know what I mean, I guess, and things. But maybe it's because it's not graded, right? So since there's no grade in here, you can't see the statistics. Is that right, Scott?
Yeah, and I can help you see where to find that. Now they have improved a number of those things in the last couple of semesters.
Okay, so Laura,
I'll get a course going with grades where we can look at that.
Okay, that's fine. Okay, so the last thing I was going to talk about is GIFs. And so I use a lot of GIFs and announcements and things to try to engage students. And so this is the one I put up yesterday as an example that I wanted to show on how this can be somewhat effective to be able to communicate with students and something that adds to more than just having text there. And so in this case, I had given them feedback on certain assignment, and then we could ask them to respond or hopefully utilize that feedback. And so here you can see that's what the GIF looks like. And so now I'm going to show you how I do that. I need to move some things out of the way here. So if I go over to, so first thing that I recommend doing, if I can get the Zoom bar to let me in there. So if I just open up a normal announcement, so what you're going to use is just the normal embed image. But now I use Gify is what the primary one that I use. And so I just did Wednesday, since we're on Wednesday today. And so we'll choose that GIF there. And then you hit copy link. You go in here, you copy, you go back, you click it in here, you hit update, and you're done. And you have a GIF and it looks like you're really techie, you know what I mean, to your students, and you're being creative and things. But it actually, in my experience, it's faster for me to get a GIF using this purpose or this mechanism than it is for me to go find like a meme or something to add in, because it's really fast, to just go find the URL I need and copy it into that embed link, and it puts a GIF right in my announcement. So I see there's great chat going on. Other questions on anything that I presented there? Or if not, we can move more into the last part, which is just more, okay, show how I embed it again. So here I'll do, so you go here, the embed image. So then you get the URL code here. If you go to Gify, you're going to click copy link is how you get to this. I go to that GIF link in the middle, you copy, you come over, you copy and paste it in. If you want to resize dimensions, it's all going to automatically fill here, and so you can resize those. I don't usually play around with those too much. I'm usually trying to do this pretty fast, and so I put them in, and so then I just hit update, and it puts it in where I want to.
And that's where you could include the alt text. There's a field in there for alt text. If you're going to keep it more permanently and reuse it, you might want to include the subject matter there.
And so how I've used this some is I guess I could find maybe some announcement examples to show you. I like to use old movie GIFs and say, hey, you guys know what movie this is from? That kind of fits in with whatever the theme of the announcement I'm making is. I think I did one here on Thursday. Yeah. So here's an example, you know what I mean? And so there's a student that responded back with, you know, what the movie was that I pulled, you know, a GIF from and things. And so I've seen some classes that have responded better to this. My spring class really loved this. You know, I guess in my spring online students, and you would see a huge trail of students that would respond back when I did this and things. And they talked about how much some of the students talked about how much they look forward to my announcements to see what GIF, you know, I would include in it and things that day. And so it's kind of become something that I try to include in most of the announcements I put out. Any other questions or things I can show, or should we move more into the town hall part of anything that people would like to share or ask questions about in Canvas? Okay, so I'm going to stop sharing my screen now. So Scott, anything there's a lot going on in the chat, or Scott or anyone else, I guess, is there anyone that would like to talk some about the discussions happening in the chat, maybe to help bring people that maybe aren't monitoring that quite as closely?
Yeah, I think everyone else has been helping wonderfully to answer questions. So I think we're somewhat caught up on the questions in the chat. So I'll start by leaving it open for people to ask other questions that they might want to pose, or scenarios, or great ideas.
So Don's got his hand up, I see.
So I have a question. It's not exactly related to some of the stuff we've been talking about, but in terms of Canvas analytics, I had a student who had asked some question about some content. So I'd gone in and just wanted to see, you know, how much the student was engaged in the content. And I guess some analytics on that student that I didn't understand. They're different than they've been in past years. And I wonder if y'all could shed some light on them. It was something like they had this many page views and it was like in the hundreds. And it just seemed kind of unusual. So I wondered if you could give any guidance about what the Canvas analytics they're providing are about, say, student engagement in the course, and how to make sense of those.
Sure. Maybe the first thing to remember is that it's basically relying on the web browser to report their actions that they're doing with their mouse or active windows, so to speak. So one way that you can sort of rack up 100 page views pretty easily would be to go to a page, say a module that you posted in Canvas. So first of all, what's the definition of visiting a page, I guess maybe I should say. And I might take a minute as I'm doing this to pull some things up in the Canvas community where they describe the scope. You know, a page count is this, and this. So that is documented here, and I will find those, and rather than delay my conversation, I'll drop those in the chat. But so like I said, the thing to understand maybe is if I'm clicking on your course and I'm viewing an assignment or one of your page, capital P pages, then that's a page view. And then I click away from that to go into a Spotify and change my album. And then I click away back into the course and I view your page again. That's not going to be counted as a second hit. I haven't left that page, even though I left the screen. But if I go to the gradebook and then back to the assignment and then to the gradebook and to the next assignment and then to the gradebook and the third assignment, to the gradebook and the fourth assignment, every one of those is a unique hit. So sort of bouncing through the modules, kind of looking for something, or doing the hub, what I call the hub and spoke model, you know, starting on the gradebook and going into one and then back and then into one and then back. Those are going to count as individual page views. An action, something that they take an action on, is submitting something, posting a discussion, actually submitting an assignment, commenting. Those are all things where they actually submit something that goes from their browser back to the Canvas server. Those are what they count as an action actually happening. And again, I'll drop some links in here in a moment after I wrap up what I'm saying, so I can focus on that part, and that will clarify specifically what each of those page views and other details mean. It's a good question, because I think it's the thing I wanted to start with. It's useful to understand that it's basically just reporting what they're doing in their web browser. So again, if they do something like let me expand this for a second to talk about the test log. If you've ever used the quiz log to look at the actions that a student has taken when they take an online Canvas quiz, maybe not all of you even know about that quiz log, but when they do an online Canvas quiz, you can view a log for each of their attempts, and it says, student started the assignment at 3:01, student viewed question 1, student answered question 1, student viewed question 2, student answered question 2, student left the page. And that's when they toggle away, get to go change their album on Spotify, or to answer a text from their mom, or to, just open up another window to potentially look up an answer, right? So you can't really know, it's just reporting an action in the browser. So the thing I want to end with is that none of these analytics are airtight, right? And none of these reporting things are maybe as neat and tidy as anyone would like them to be. You should use them as guides, but your initial example, Dawn, highlights when you see something sort of anomalous, like how come all my students have 20, 30, 40 views, but 2 students have 300 views, you might equate that to be they're just, maybe even just overzealous and clicked around a lot. But there's no real way of knowing besides following up with the student. And one could argue that's where we tie this into our larger conversation. Those may give you opportunities for engagement, even if they're vague. You may, the recommendation is you look at those and use those to make some sort of a decision, like, these people, kind of like the message students too that Brian talked about. This set of students, I'm looking at these analytics and they kind of look like something's up here. Maybe I'll just reach out and say, is something up? That might be all it takes. So I'll end that there.
Thank you. I appreciate that. That was sort of what I was thinking, but I love to have confirmation. And we've already gotten some links in the chat. Thank you for the individuals who've been posting those. Thank you.
Yeah. Oh, yes. Great. Thank you. Yes, I'm seeing that too. So addressing notifications more broadly. So notifications are kind of an important but interesting thing with the way Canvas works, and the way the young kids today with their rock and roll and their Elvis Presley, the way that they interact with systems. So when everybody has a default setting for those notifications, and for students we turn the vast majority of them on, announcements, new file uploads, grades posted, assignment comments, all of those things are turned on by default for students. And they have to deliberately go, and most of them for instructors too. And you have to go deliberately to your account and settings and notifications and modify them and disable them. And certainly plenty of students have told us in feedback that they do that because they want to tune it up or tune it down. But Canvas has historically been an all or none thing. Those notifications affect all of your courses. You have no discretion to say, for this one course that's my peers where we're uploading files for a search committee, I don't need any notifications on. But these other ones that I'm participating in as a grad student, I definitely want them on. And this one that I'm a GTA teaching in with a faculty member, I want some of them on because I'm responsible for the discussions and the grades, but I don't necessarily need all of them on, right? So if you wanted to make them work for you, it was kind of difficult. Canvas just recently added at the course level, you and students both can disable all notifications at the course level. There's no discretion there either, but that does give you and students an option, both a positive and negative one, based on the example I just described. You may want to use that and turn it off, but now, and this is the fear of a lot of us generally, that students now can just go switch off notifications wholesale for your course. So the admins or you, the instructors, just don't have that much control over notifications, and Canvas is intentional that way. They let us set some defaults, but then it's their philosophy that the students should be in charge of that. but Canvas is very chatty, right? As we're saying, we want there to be notifications for grades and comments and files and other things. But if you have 5 classes and they're all doing that, it can get really chatty and students start ignoring them. Even if they're not turning them off deliberately, we all can agree that you start getting emails from the same source over and over again. You kind of stop looking at them very closely. So this is all stuff you already know, I think. I'm just laying that out to say that the reality is notifications are not as effective as we would like, and they also are less controllable than some of us might like in order to try to make them be more effective. So I have 2 pieces of advice for you, and I'll wrap up this topic, and you all can ask questions about it, of course, too. One is, tell your students in your syllabus and your opening part of your course what your expectations are related to notifications. It can be as simple as, hey, I'm going to use the assignment comments a lot to interact with you and provide you feedback. I highly recommend that you keep the comment notifications on for this course. Or, hey, I tend to upload a lot of files and a lot of resources for you to look at and read, and also use the notifications, and we're going to be doing discussion assignments, so please make sure you're paying attention to the notifications from this course. Just set an expectation for that. And then number 2, I'm going to share my screen for a moment. The other thing that I would like to show, not new analytics, I'm sorry, let me change browser tabs here, is that I think all of you are pretty familiar with can you all see my web browser and I'm in Canvas?
Yeah, we can.
Yeah, thank you. I think you're all pretty familiar with the idea of the to-do list. And as you know, again, I'm gesturing over here on the right. Oh, I think I'm in I thought I had some to-dos there for assignments, but I may have changed the dates there a little bit wrong. So what I want to encourage you to consider is students do tell us that, I'm sorry, I'm clicking around awkwardly here. Students do tell us that they use the to-do list and they pay attention to the to-do list, and that it is an effective way to notify them, quote unquote. And so creating an assignment that, yeah, I'm in the wrong course. That's my problem here. Creating an assignment that is no submission, but maybe has a to-do component. So like this one here that I have as an example, bring your lab book and goggles to class today. It's not really an assignment. I'm not asking them to produce some piece of work and submit it to me or answer questions, but I am assigning them a task. Bring your lab book and goggles to class today because we're going to do an experiment. So I highlight that to say that you can sort of create your own version of a notification by using no submission assignments so that they get on the to-do list. It helps that they would have a date, kind of a deadline, right? When I say bring it to class today, I can set the date of the assignment for today from 3 to 4 when our class is or whatever. But you can use that to sort of piggyback on the notification idea and maybe hit people where they're paying a little bit more attention.
Can I ask a follow-up quick, Scott? I've noticed that below the to-do list, isn't there comments that you make back on assignments? Aren't those populating there? I've seen some students, now I've not seen it on my side, but I've seen them record some videos and things where I've noticed that the comments that I'm making back to them are like populating below that to-do list. Can you talk about that? Or is that something that's...
Yeah, so there's actually multiple parts to the to-do list for the student. Below the to-do list is a section called recent feedback. And it does exactly what you've described. It tries to bubble up the most recent feedback they've gotten in those assignment comments or in the gradebook comments. So I think it's a good idea that you brought that up generally, but it adds to this point that there is another way for you to sort of get something into that to-do list. And it is by providing the gradebook feedback where you click the little cartoon, chat icon and you can leave a note there by their grade, or using the comment style text or video or audio that Brian described. Those will show up on that to-do list in a recent feedback section.
Is that new? Because I was surprised.
Oh, actually, that's been around from the get-go.
Has it really? Okay.
Yeah. But it is below the to-do list. And for a lot of students, that to-do list is actually pretty long. and so it gets pushed out of view. So I think that's maybe relevant. Mine's not very long, but yeah, it can get pushed right on out of view, and you have to scroll down to see it. The other thing I wanted to highlight before we leave this topic is this is new, that Canvas has added to the student homepage a View Course Notifications button. And this is where I can disable or enable, that I mentioned before, sort of totally override the notifications for that course. So I wanted to highlight that is where that's taken care of if you want to use it. But again, I'm not thrilled that students have that option, because I'm afraid that some will disable that and not realize the implications.
One comment I had about the student to-do list. So I use Pages pretty heavily, as you guys saw in my part of the talk earlier. So for Pages and other things that are not assignments, you can also add those to the student to-do list. There's a little button at the bottom if you go and edit any Canvas content, and there's a button that says Add to to-do list.
Yeah. Or
Add to students to do. And
yeah,
you can set a date and a time, and yeah, it's pretty helpful.
And that is fairly new, but that is, yeah, absolutely, that feeds into this as a very helpful answer. And Melissa has mentioned in the chat that using Pages for reminders or ungraded tasks is certainly an excellent idea, especially if you already have a structure in which you're presenting, having your students come to a page where they know they're going to get updated information. And maybe this is a great time to make a general point that I suspect if you're here in this level of training, you probably already understand this, but a very simple thing you can do that doesn't really require you to know any tips or tricks, and that is think of how you interact with the web generally every day yourself. Students come into these courses at some level is no different than them going to their news sites and their sports sites and other things, right? When they come there, if they don't see any fresh content, if they don't see anything has changed, they're moving on. And so if you condition, so to speak, them from the beginning that the homepage of your course or a certain reminders page is where you're going to have the news, the updated information, that reading list that Colby gave as an example is a good version of this too, right? Students know I can come here, I need to come here, or if I'm lost or behind, I can come here and I can see that this has got fresh content. It's always changing, and it helps me know where I am in the roadmap. So I think that doing whatever way you do that, whether it's with a page or a to-do list or some specific ones, a reading list and an assignment list, etc., that kind of engagement, I think, is what we're all sort of talking about at the base level. And that's what is the engagement that students end up looking for, they tell us. In the comments, people have said, yep, students can dismiss those to-do list items by clicking the X. It's true that my experience has been students don't know that, and they haven't cleared their to-do list. When they get a grade on things that have a grade, they'll clear, but those ungraded assignments, like I suggested, they have to clear them manually. So that is an important point. And I see something about USD 383. My son is also in 383 and all online, doing the all online option. She gets notified when teachers upload files but haven't published them yet. Okay, so yeah, that's a nuance of notifications that I'll address as well. So they only get notified for an uploaded file if you've published them. But a lot of instructors, and I've especially noticed this in the 383 classes, are having them published by default. When you upload them, if you have used them in another course, like a course you set up and then you're copying them in and they were published there, then they're coming over published into your new course, and then they're unpublishing them. So that it is the case that Canvas remembers the published state of things when you copy or move them or share them around. And that has been my experience, where they've uploaded something, it was already published, and they unpublish it. By the time the student gets there, they've gotten a notification that says they're a new file, and then when they go, it's not there. When they follow the link is broken. It says, this file's not there, contact your instructor, which is sometimes not helpful to you as an instructor. So great point to your daughter for noticing that and bringing that up, because I do think it's very relevant to all of you. And that is, again, on the notifications, they're quite chatty. And I used to say they amplify your mistakes, right? If you post a file and then, oh, that's the wrong one, and delete it entirely, like last year's syllabus. Oh, I uploaded last year's syllabus, and you delete it and then upload another one and publish that. Now they've gotten 2 notifications about effectively the same file. And if they follow the link in the first one, it's going to be broken. And if they follow the link in the second one, it's going to work. So they follow the link in the first one and it says, this is broken, contact your instructor. So they email you, and then they go back and follow the second one and see it's there. So they email you again to say, never mind, I found it. Right? It just generates a lot of noise. So those notifications can amplify your mistakes. And I think that's an example of it.
And one mistake that I seem to do regularly is I'll forget to publish a module that has documents that are already published for them, and they can't access those documents until that module itself is published.
Yeah, that's a common one. Publish all the things in it and forget that top level module. Yep. Canvas has done a little bit more to alert you with visuals about that on the page in the last couple of semesters, but it's still pretty easy to do. And they have for the whole course, published or unpublished. You might not have noticed yet, but last semester they break up your home screen to published and unpublished. They're filtered so you can see, holy cow, this course is in the unpublished section. Before it gets too far away, someone asked about lockdown browser, and I can address that pretty quickly. K-State does not have a university-wide lockdown browser license per se. We were granted, like many software companies, for the initial COVID semester, we were granted a university-wide license for free, so we made that available. And this question is about renewing that license. So the university is not planning to renew that license at the university level, but we do have basically an opt-in university license. We can add departments or colleges to that lockdown browser license, and then every course in that college or department would be able to use it at that time. So although it is not universally available, a department or college could buy into the existing license we have, and we can tweak it so that all of the courses in your college or department have that available. It doesn't automatically get turned on. And it costs about, right now, because of the way the cost is split, for a whole college or a department, it's only like $1,300 and if a year. And if 2 or 3 more come on, it would go down below $1,000 a year. So if it is something that your college or department is considering, it's a pretty cheap and effective option. I'll let Dawn or others chime in, but I'm still in the camp. Generally, I would recommend against the kind of high stakes assessments where you might feel you really need the lockdown browser to try to identify some alternate strategies. But I understand as well as anybody that there are plenty of cases where locking down your content and the experience for your students is an important part of the choice for certification reasons or otherwise. So it will remain an option at K-State, but you'll need to buy into it. And you can reach out to me to have that discussion if you'd like.
And I'm going to piggyback on Scott's point there is having now speaking from practice, I just had a 200-person general psychology class take a multiple choice exam that they could use all of their resources, all of their notes. We set it so that they do 40 questions in 60 minutes. And I let them know that you're not going to have time to look everything up with only 90 seconds per item. And our mean was about a 75. It wasn't the case that if you write the questions at a high level and you let them know you're going to write them at a high level, there's a lot of resources on this. I think we can avoid some of those kinds of things that we typically have problems with without introducing additional logistics or additional grading time. So this is something we've been talking about since our move to remote learning and spring break last semester. But those opportunities are available to us. But I think that Scott is right, that some of those services that we had prior to the pandemic are no longer available to us, either due to logistics or cost. In the 6-ish minutes we have left, one of the things I wanted to do is kind of get back to the town hall kind of thing that we had kind of anticipated. Is I want to hear kind of from the crowd, what are the coolest things that you all are doing in Canvas that we haven't talked about to make our learning more innovative, more engaging, and just more successful? And remember, the silence that we have when we ask questions on Zoom meetings, we don't want to be the students who create that silence. So feel free to chime in.
I guess this isn't really something that's like on Canvas or anything, but one thing that my students commented, I just did a mid-semester evaluation, was that I have like the lecture videos and I break them up into 5 or 10 minute increments. And so they have multiple videos a week. And they said they really liked that because they could stop at one video and then look at another video later. And that way they weren't kind of inundating themselves with 45 minutes of a video. So that was really helpful. And I organize them in my modules as well in order so they know exactly which order to go in as well.
You know, I do the exact same thing, and I did it for them, but I find I like doing it better myself too. It's so much easier to do a 10-minute video than a 45-minute as the instructor too. So thank you so much for raising that. I think it's something a lot of us don't think about, but it is a non-trivial change. That's awesome. I am seeing in the chat a lot of people are asking about Flipgrid. So I was wondering if anyone who is comfortable with this technique, familiar with this technique, wants to give us maybe an overview or a couple of tips for success.
Don, I was one of the persons that asked a question about it, and I wonder if I could specify. One of the issues that I struggle with Zoom is that only one person can be talking, but it's so limiting in the way of there's just this lag when people are trying to communicate and trying to exchange ideas, that doesn't allow it doesn't facilitate people to chime in, right? It creates this kind of arbitrary breakdown of a conversation. So I wonder about people's experience with this Flipgrid. I had not heard about it, and how it helps expedite these discussions.
One of the things I'm going to say immediately is Laura Widener was nice enough to say that there's a presentation on Flipgrid on the 28th at 4 p.m. I was wondering, Laura, if you could drop in, is there a Zoom link or something like that into the chat? But one of the things there's a link. Excellent, Trina. One of the things that's really cool about these sessions that we're doing on Wednesdays at noon is we always have at least one instructional designer here, and they know a lot of stuff that I don't know. So thank you so much for sharing that, Laura. For someone who's used Flipgrid, can you give us a little bit of an overview of what it even is?
I can share a little bit about Flipgrid.
Thank you.
I'm going to get my video. Am I working? I've used Flipgrid for a number of semesters now, and it's a third-party software that you can integrate into Canvas. So it's all embedded right there in an assignments. So you can create a Flipgrid assignment, which is a video-based platform. So your instructions for the assignment can be in video or print or both. And the students reply, and the system creates the video. So there's a video recorder that just pops up on the screen. They can hit record. They can do some minor editing and add fun little details and stuff to their videos. And then they post their video, and their classmates can see those videos and then reply to those videos. So it's basically like a discussion board, except it's all through video. And they don't have to save files. They don't have to upload video files. It's all integrated right there on the screen. So it's super easy. And they have a setting that allows you to turn on closed captioning. So it's going to be automatic, an automated closed captioning. So it's not perfect, but it's pretty good. And I have found that helpful, especially if students have a low mic res. Sometimes the closed captioning will be able to articulate what you can actually hear, or some students find it helpful with other people's accents to see the print. So even if they're not hearing impaired in any way, the closed captioning is still helpful, and it's all automated. So you don't have to do any kind of adjustments to get captioning with those videos. So it's quick and it's easy.
Thank you. That was a fantastic overview. I'm very excited to hear about it now. Thank you.
You're welcome.
So we are just about out of time. So I want to use the couple minutes that we've got left, a couple seconds we've got left, to thank our wonderful presenters, Colby Moorberg, Brian Lindshield, and Scott Finkeldei, for sharing their thoughts about Canvas and alternative textbook opportunities and those kinds of things. So I'm clapping for you the way that we clap on Zoom. So thank you so much. I want to remind you that we have professional development events every Wednesday. So next week, same bad time, same bad channel. What we'll be doing next week is talking about how we follow through on the promise of support. And Andy Thompson from the Office of Student Life will be here to guide us in that. And I will say that we probably need to follow through on the promise of student support now more than ever. So I'm looking forward to see all of you next week, and I look forward to see all of you every week. So thank you so much for being part of our day.